He didn't even hesitate. Right there, in front of a full courtroom, he slammed down a contempt fine on Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, $500. No warning, no second thought, just the gavel and the assumption that she'd back down. But she didn't. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't flinch. She simply asked one thing. Your Honor, for the record, I'd like your reasoning included in the appellate file. That moment, that calm, or razor-sharp request, didn't just silence the judge. It cracked the very floor he thought was solid. And as the day unfolded, what began as an insult turned into something bigger. A shift, not just in the room, but in the system, because this wasn't just about a fine. It was about dignity, about how black women are expected to stay quiet, even when they know the law better than those trying to silence them. Stay with us, because this isn't just another headline. It's the voice our grandmothers were never allowed to raise. Subscribe and stay, because silence no longer protects us. The courtroom was warmer than usual that morning, not sweltering, just thick enough to make people fidget in their chairs and adjust their collars, a kind of heat that didn't come from the thermostat, but from tension hanging in the air. Jasmine Crockett stood at the defense table, poised, one hand resting gently on a stack of folders, the other at her side. Her posture said control. Her expression unshaken, not a wrinkle in her gray slacks, not a drop of sweat on her brow. Her eyes never left the bench. Judge Randall Forrester, an aging lion with a history of short patience and long memory, leaned forward. His voice clipped. Miss Crockett, this court does not entertain political speeches disguised as legal arguments. He said, tone cold, you've been warned once. If you continue down this path, I will find you in contempt. Jasmine's response was measured, no flare, no flinch. With all due respect, Your Honor, this isn't politics. It's a precedent. And I'm asking the court to recognize the difference. That's when it landed. $500? Contempt of court. The words sliced through the room like a blade. Audible gasps rippled. A young law student in the gallery whispered, did she just get fined for citing case law? But Jasmine didn't move. The bailiff scribbled notes. The court clerk glanced up, uncertain. The prosecutor, Leland Briggs, didn't even look away from his papers, theatrically flipping them, as if this was just another Thursday. Crockett cleared her throat, voice steady. Then, I respectfully request the court's rationale for the fine, she said, calm as morning rain. So it may be reviewed as part of the appellate record. Forrester blinked, not used to being questioned. Certainly not like that. His jaw flexed. Excuse me, you fined me for contempt, she said again. I'm asking that your reasoning be entered into the record, should it be necessary, for review. It wasn't a challenge. It was a mirror. And for a moment, Judge Forrester saw himself reflected not as the arbiter of law, but as a man reacting from discomfort rather than principle. You're bordering on disrespect, he warned, and you're bordering on suppressing a valid defense. She replied, same voice, same tone. I'm quoting federal case law. I've not raised my voice. I've not made a speech. If that's contempt, then we've all lost something bigger than $500. Someone in the gallery let out a nervous laugh. Then silence again. The kind of silence that makes people sit straighter, lean forward, listen harder. Forrester's mouth opened, then closed. Move on, he grumbled. Before I make it 1,000? But it was too late. The moment had already shifted the room. Because Crockett hadn't raised her volume, she'd raised the bar. And even those who came expecting another routine hearing now found themselves leaning into a story that wasn't just about a fine. It was about a fault line running through the system. One that Jasmine Crockett had just tapped with quiet force outside the courtroom. That gavel might have sounded like order, but inside, It sounded like the fear of a black woman who knew the law too well to be silenced. 2 days before that courtroom showdown, Jasmine Crockett sat in a modest corner office on the second floor of a beige, creaky floored law firm in downtown Dallas. No sleek glass walls. No espresso machine. Just dusty file cabinets with actual keys and a desk worn soft at the edges from years of hard conversations. She paced slowly. Flat, quiet on the old carpet. The phone cradled between her shoulder and ear. Notepad in hand. "Who's the arresting officer?" she asked. "Pin. Tapping." "Officer Trent Walsh," came the reply. Pulled 6 protesters out of a sedan. Outside the Northern Star Oil building. Charged them with unlawful assembly and trespassing. Were they violent? No. One's a high school art teacher. The others are in their 20s. They were reading statements. Sitting on the steps. Jasmine stopped mid-step. Reading. Yeah, the whole thing's on video. Someone live-streamed it on Facebook. She closed her eyes, hand running down her face. She'd seen this pattern before. Protesting outside a corporate building, private security got spooked and called the police. Then come the charges. Loud names on quiet paperwork meant to scare people into silence. But this one felt sloppy. "I'll take it," she said. "You sure?" They're calling it a waste of court time. They've said that before. By the end of the day, 6 folders stretched across her desk, like a line of quiet battles. Each one charged with the same offenses, same phrasing, almost copy-paste. No witness statements from building staff, just a vague affidavit, and grainy screenshots. But one detail stuck out, like a shard of broken glass. Officer Walsh claimed he gave 3 loud, clear warnings before making arrests. But on video, he barely got through one. You hear his voice once half drowned in street noise. Then he's grabbing wrists. That first wrist, it belonged to Marissa Elkins, the art teacher. She wore cat-eye glasses and carried a sketch pad. In the video, she doesn't even look up before. Officer Walsh yanks her arm. Jasmine paused the footage. The image frozen on her laptop. Marissa's mouth mid-sentence. Walsh's hand closed around her wrist, like she was dangerous. She wasn't. She was quoting a passage from Dr. Azalai's King, and Jasmine knew this wouldn't make the front page. No headlines. No outrage hashtags. Just another quiet example of a system flexing its muscle where it thought no one was watching. That's why Jasmine didn't hesitate to step into that courtroom. Because someone had to. She dug up Dallas city ordinances, pulled federal rulings, found 2 cases nearly identical in scope. One from Oklahoma, one from Indiana. She was ready, but what she hadn't counted on, Judge Randall Forrester. Not just stern, dismissive. The kind who saw protest as noise, civil rights as nostalgia, and arguments from black lawyers as too much. When Jasmine introduced herself that morning, he barely nodded, glanced at her clients like they were names on a docket, not people with voices. "We'll keep this quick," he muttered. But quick meant quiet, and quiet was what the system relied on. Her client sat beside her, Marissa, 2 college students, a postal worker, and Daryl, a community gardener with a heart condition. A man who couldn't stand too long without risking collapse. They didn't look dangerous. They looked tired, like people who'd been told that sitting down could ruin their future. And maybe it could, unless someone stood up for them. Jasmine leaned over and whispered, "Stay calm. I'll speak for us." Marissa gently squeezed her hand beneath the table. "You always do." But Jasmine wasn't there just to speak. She came to dismantle it. Because when a system learns no one's watching, it starts to believe it can do anything. Arrest anyone. Silence anyone. And this time, that system was wrong. That afternoon, when court resumed, the air had changed. Not dramatically, just enough to notice people leaned forward, not back. Phones were silenced, without reminders. No one was there for theatrics. They were waiting for Jasmine. Judge Forster entered with his usual stiffness, chin high, robe rustling. But when he glanced across the room, his eyes paused, briefly, on her. A flicker, just long enough to say he remembered her voice. Jasmine stood, no fanfare, just posture, notes in one hand, fingertips lightly resting on the table. She didn't need volume. She had weight. Your honor. She began. We're not here to dispute property damage or physical aggression. My clients sat. They read. They didn't obstruct, didn't vandalize, didn't threaten. They were arrested, she said, because someone didn't like what they were saying. Forrester cut as sharp as glass. Miss Crockett, we are not retrying the officer's discretion. You are here to argue the merits of your motion to dismiss. I am, she answered, without pause. And the merits are grounded in the First Amendment, reinforced by Martin B., City of Stroud, and, more recently, Holder Fowl, Community Network. His eyes narrowed. That last case was obscure. Most attorneys didn't bother referencing it. An appellate ruling out of Indiana, buried in archives. But Crockett had found it. And more importantly, she understood it. Your point, Forrester asked, almost challenging. In Holder, she said, the court ruled that protesters outside a private building couldn't be charged with trespass when that space was publicly accessible. She paused, measured. The Northern Star headquarters. Those steps are not gated, not private. They are open to the public, the press, delivery drivers, and passers-by. Forrester folded his arms. So now we're applying Indiana precedent to Texas law. She nodded. Not applying, drawing parallels. Because when multiple states begin suppressing peaceful assembly, in the same way it becomes a pattern, one, this court cannot afford to ignore. Leland Briggs, the prosecutor, let out a loud sigh. Your honor. This is a stretch. These individuals broke the law, plain and simple. Jasmine turned, calmly. Mr. Briggs, did you watch the video? He hesitated. I read the incident reports, so you haven't seen the footage. It's not relevant. It is, she countered. The arrest report says Officer Walsh gave 3 verbal warnings. The video shows him barely finishing one before grabbing Miss Elkins. No crowd control. No PA system. No microphone. Just his voice. On a noisy Dallas street. Forrester scanned the paperwork again, but paused visibly. Officer Walsh is not here today. No. Sire, she said. The department said he's on leave. Stress related. Briggs jumped in. He's a decorated officer. He made an error. That happens. Jasmine didn't even flinch. This isn't about punishing him. It's about correcting the result of that error. That's when the silence set in again. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just real. People didn't move. Forrester didn't speak. Because the words hung too heavy. She's turning this into a political sideshow. Briggs muttered. Jasmine didn't look at him. Her tone didn't change. This isn't a show, she said. This is my client's life. Their futures, their records, their safety. And if the justice system can't take those seriously, then what are we even doing here? Forrester stared at her. The kind of stare meant to intimidate. But it didn't land. Because she hadn't come with fire. She'd come with structure. Because when the world tries to dismiss your voice, you don't shout louder. You make it impossible to ignore. If you believe this is what Black America needed all along, say truth in the comments below. Judge Forrester flipped through the folder slowly, page after page of reports. Then, as if by accident, he stopped, his brow furrowed. He lifted a paper with 2 fingers, cautious, and read it silently. It was the affidavit, submitted not by Jasmine, but by the prosecution. A single paragraph, easily missed, signed by Gerard Blanche, property manager of the Northern Star building. Miss Crockett, Forrester said, eyes still scanning. This affidavit came from the building's management. Yes, Your Honor, from Mr. Blanche. He submitted it the morning after the arrests. You submitted this? No, the prosecution did. Briggs sat up straighter, caught off guard. Yes, it came in with the department's original packet. Forrester read aloud. At the time of the protest, the building entrances were not obstructed. No physical damage was observed. Protesters remained seated on the front steps and did not interfere with foot traffic or operations. Police were not requested by property management. He stopped, then repeated the last line slower. Police were not requested by property management. The room was still. Briggs shifted in his seat. Your Honor, that doesn't mean the protest was legal. No, Forrester said, voice sharper. Now, but it does mean that the arresting officer escalated without direction from ownership. That raises questions. He looked directly at Jasmine, and for the first time, his gaze wasn't tight with skepticism. It was searching. She said nothing. He turned back to Briggs. Did you question Officer Walsh about this statement? Briggs fumbled. No. I relied on the arrest reports. Forrester held up the affidavit, which contradicts this. A beat. Then, with a wave of his hand, he turned to the bailiff. Play the footage. Moments later, the courtroom lights dimmed slightly, and the screen lit up with shaky video, street noise, a hum of traffic, voices, and then Officer Walsh. No megaphone, no loudspeaker, just his voice. You could barely hear him, but you could hear Marissa Elkins. And that's why the voices of the people must not be ignored. Then a hand, her wrist. She's lifted. Another protester, shocked, is pulled up seconds later. No third warning. No negotiation, just reaction. Forrester leaned back, expression unreadable, but everyone in that room could feel it. A shift. You wrote a memo on Holder V. Community network during law school. He said suddenly. Jasmine blinked. Yes, sire. How do I know that? He flipped the affidavit. On the back, a note. Gerard Blanche had remembered her. 7 years earlier, she'd represented a tenant of his in a discrimination claim. He said, Forrester murmured, you dismantled their argument. Without ever raising your voice, the courtroom went silent again. He studied her no longer as a challenger, but as something else. Then he turned to Briggs. I'm dismissing the charges. All 6. On grounds of insufficient cause for arrest and failure to meet burden of proof. The gavel hit the wood like thunder. Gasps. A stifled sob. Marissa covered her mouth. Darrell bowed his head, hand to his chest. And Jasmine, still, she didn't smile. Didn't she? Because she wasn't done. Forrester cleared his throat. As for the contempt, fine, I'm striking it from the record. His voice was quieter now. You've made your point, Miss Crockett. She met his eyes. I wasn't trying to. The courtroom doors creaked open, and people shuffled out, not like they were rushing to beat traffic, but like something sacred had just happened, and they were still trying to name it. Jasmine Crockett gathered her folders, slowly. No rush, no fist pump, just stillness. Outside, in the narrow courthouse hallway, the overhead lights buzzed, like they always did. Familiar, fluorescent, but something in the air felt different. Lighter. Somehow, Darrell leaned against the wall, hand resting on his chest. Not from pain, just quiet release. He shook his head. You saved us, he whispered. I thought I'd be walking out of there with a criminal record, for sitting down. Jasmine turned toward him, meeting his eyes. You didn't break the law. Daryl, you made someone uncomfortable. There's a difference. And this time, someone noticed. Marissa Elkins stepped forward, sketchbook still clutched like a shield. Her voice trembled a little. Can I ask you something? Always, Jasmine said gently. How did you not lose it? When he fined you, when he cut you off, he was trying to embarrass you. I would have shouted. Jasmine smiled, not amused, but knowing. You don't fight fire with heat. You fight it with form. Judges don't respond to anger. They respond to precision. Calm isn't a weakness. It's control. She paused. I knew the law. I trusted my footing. And I trusted you. Marissa nodded slowly, like she was absorbing something deeper than advice. More like armor. Behind them, footsteps approached. Familiar. Measured. It was the young law student from the gallery, the one who had gasped when Jasmine was fined. He was clutching a spiral notebook to his chest like it was a life vest. Excuse me, Ms. Crockett. She turned. I just wanted to say, I've read your dissent on the Wallace housing decision. I'm at UNT Law. What you did there wasn't just legal. It was something else. Jasmine softened. It's not about being impressive, she said. It's about being consistent. Show up prepared, especially when they expect you not to. And never forget who you're really speaking to. Who's that? He asked. Everyone they think won't understand the law. Everyone they hope will stay quiet. Before he could respond, another voice. This one, heavier, older, cut through. Miss Crockett. Judge Forrester stood a few feet away. No robe now, just shirt sleeves. Jacket folded over his arm. He looked unguarded. I remembered your name, he said. After I saw the affidavit, she stayed silent. You dismantled the rent control challenge in front of Judge Lassiter. Quietly, methodically. I told my clerk that day, this one doesn't bark. She chisels. Jasmine tilted her head slightly, not flattered, just listening. Have you ever considered taking the bench? He asked. She didn't blink. I'm not done with this part yet. He nodded. Fair enough. Then turned and walked away. Jacket still, over one shoulder. Stepped slower than before. Daryl looked at her. You gonna take that as a win? Jasmine breathed in, long and steady. No, she said. Just the opening statement. That evening, Jasmine Crockett sat beneath the soft amber glow of a cafe off Swiss Avenue. Her blazer, carefully folded beside her, bore the quiet wrinkles of a day spent in measured battle. The iced tea before her remained untouched. Its ice melted into stillness. Its sweat trailing down the glass. Across from her sat Nico, first-year intern, eyes wide, notebook open but blank. He had followed her from the courthouse like a witness, chasing understanding. I don't get it, he said, breaking the silence. He fined you in front of everyone. He dismissed you before you even got to speak. Why didn't you push back harder? Jasmine stirred her tea slowly. Because when you make it personal, you lose control. The courtroom isn't a debate stage. It's a structure. Judges don't listen to anger. They listen to architecture. But it was personal. Nico insisted. He disrespected you. She nodded. He did. But justice doesn't come when you react. It comes when you respond with clarity. The law doesn't care about feelings. It listens when you make it impossible to look away. Nico leaned in. But how did you stay composed? You looked like stone. I wasn't composed, she said. I was prepared. There's a difference. You don't have to feel calm to act with conviction. He sat back, processing. You think he changed his mind because of the affidavit? No, she said. He changed his posture because he saw he couldn't push me off the ground I built. She looked out the window. I gave him nowhere soft to land, no hole to crawl through. Just law cold, clear, unbending. Nico tapped his pen nervously. I want to be able to do that someday. You will, she said, but don't aim to be like me. Learn the law like it's your second skin, not just to win, but to protect. He asked, softer. Now, do you ever get tired of it? She finally took a sip of the tea. It had gone warm, but she didn't flinch. All the time. She said, but I get more tired watching people lose because no one bothered to stand with them. Across the street, 2 teenagers passed. One carried a handmade sign, "We have the right to speak." The other, "We're not going away." Nico noticed them too. They don't even know what you just did for them. They don't need to, Jasmine said. They just need to feel a little safer. That's what legacy is. She stood, gathering her papers. One day, she said, looking him in the eye, someone's going to look at you the way you looked at me today. Like justice can be quiet and still hit deep. And with that, she stepped into the fading light. What Jasmine Crockett did that day wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. Didn't make the evening news. Didn't trend on social media. But in a quiet courtroom in Dallas, beneath the gaze of a man who underestimated her, she did something that echoed louder than any headline. She stood her ground, not for applause, not for victory, but for clarity, for 6 people who were arrested not for breaking laws but for making someone uncomfortable, for a system that too often confuses dissent with danger, and when the judge reached for his gavel and paused, the silence wasn't empty. It was full of something we rarely see in courtrooms like that. Reckoning. That's what real justice sounds like. Not a roar, not a sermon, but a steady voice, carrying a stack of facts, and refusing to tremble. In a country where black voices are still told to keep it down, where black women are still treated as too much, even when they're exact, Jasmine Crockett reminded the United States Congress and every courtroom watching what grace under fire really looks like, not just because she knew the law, but because she trusted it enough to demand that it see her. Congresswoman Jasmine's latest news may not be front page, but stories like hers are why we keep telling our truth. Why do we hold our line? Why do we show up again and again, even when the room hopes we won't? If this story stirred something in, you ask yourself, when was the last time silence protected us? And when was the last time it was weaponized against us? If you've ever stood your ground in a room that doubted your right to speak, this story is yours too. So drop your thoughts below. Let's hear your fire. Say it loud in the comments. Speak black truth. If this story moved something in your chest, don't scroll past. Like, share, stand, subscribe. Because they silenced our voices long enough, let's raise them louder than ever. Thank you for being here. We'll see you in the next story. The kind that they still don't want you to hear.